how does the stock market react to a situation where the United States bombs another country, right? Most people would believe that the market would react in a negative way. And I'm here to tell you that's actually not what happened. That's not what actually happened. Take a look.
Futures are muted this morning. This after the U.S. conducted strikes on Iran's nuclear sites for insights now on how this could play out in the markets this week. I want to bring in Jeremy Siegel, Professor Emeritus at Finance at University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business, also Chief Economist at Wisdom Tree. Good morning to you. I think there were a lot of people worried over the weekend about how the markets might react this morning. They seem to be reacting actually quite well. I know that you've been a little bit negative, and you are normally quite positive. So I'm curious sort of how you're reacting right now.
Well, certainly you're right. If you went to bed Friday and then you woke up this morning and looked at the markets, you would absolutely say, well, nothing happened over the weekend. It really was quite remarkable. I think it's a balance of things. I mean, first of all, we don't know how much damage was done. But at least we didn't crash in the desert the way we did 45 years ago when we tried an operation in Iran. I mean, it was successful that way. Israel's taking out, Iran's offensive capabilities was, quite impressive. I think everyone's saying, what is the next step? First of all, we're looking at the Gulf of Hormuz. If you look at Polymarket, and I just did that, they give a 23% probability that Iran will try to close the Gulf, but that is by July, so that's only 7 or 8 days away. They say there's still a low probability. But I think the question is, what is Israel satisfied with? Is this what their final goal is, or is there more? And what are they going to do about it? Should we push our attention towards neutralizing the Houthis and bringing back shipping to the Red Sea and ensuring the shipping, of course, in Hormuz? I mean, and those are questions that I have going forward. But I think that sort of, we did a successful run. Listen, whatever damage was done, I think most people agree they are farther away from producing a bomb than they were on Friday. And that's positive for the markets and, positive basically for eventual settlement in the Middle East. So that's sort of offsetting the fear, well, what will Iran and its proxies do? And, I don't know when we're going to get an answer on that. Maybe conversation will turn back to the Fed and the tariffs, which, certainly dominate.
So really quickly, we got to understand how the stock market operates, right? So normally you would think that a bomb that, is being hit on multiple, sites across Iran's country by the United States would cause a level of panic in the market, right? And in a sense, that's true. But the stock market is emotionally a little different from the standpoint that the market is always looking forward. It's always looking forward, not necessarily what's going on right now. So when the gentleman says that the market is reacting positively because the United States taking out these facilities is being seen as a positive when it comes to the future nuclear possibilities that the Iranian, people would have is a positive. So the S&P 500 and the stock market as a whole today actually went up rather than a negative panic reaction for a negative red day, right? So how you can justify the stock market moving and how you look at it has to be a little different than how a normal human being would operate when it comes to, oh my God, we just bombed the country, red in the stock market the next day. That's not necessarily how the stock market works. And in history, when something happens, a conflict happens overseas or, a war happens, the stock market has not always reacted negatively to war per se, because war can actually make money. If you didn't know, right? Defense contractors make a lot of money. Countries do make money. Oil goes up, which means, it is more expensive for us to buy gas and things like that. But it doesn't necessarily mean the stock market will go down ultimately because of that conflict. However, this is the other side though. If we were to get into a major conflict where United States soldiers were being killed and boots on the ground within a country, now that's a whole different situation, because again, the market is looking forward. And if the market sees the possibility of war from a standpoint of the United States, it has boots on ground, soldiers on ground, conflicts on a daily basis, then that's a different situation than in this situation, which it was just a few facilities. The Iranian nuclear program has been weakened. That's actually a positive for the market as a whole. And that is why the market actually went up today versus a red day.
They did the news before the Israeli strikes.
Right. I think the question that folks in the equity market are trying to grapple with is sort of either this is a massive success, in which case you would think that this has actually put us in a much better place and therefore maybe longer term there's more security, or this puts you, and I don't know where Jamie Dimon's thinking about this morning, but he's talked about the risks in the system for a very long time. And now if you think that there's a prospect of retaliation, if you think that there's the prospect of something happening in the Straits of Hormuz, or by the way, how this affects even the negotiations over trade and other things that China is going to have with the U.S., which I think is a whole other story, whether that adds to your list of anxieties.
Yeah, but I think you said, both things have been enhanced. The probability, hey, this is a success to neutralize Iran. That's positive against the risks of retaliation, which is negative. Well, so why you're seeing the market really flat is the positive and the potential negatives have sort of both gone up at the same time, and the middle has shrunk on that. A show of force such as Israel did and the U.S., also might give China some pause on what its potential intentions are for Taiwan. That's a longer run issue that we know is on the table. Just a show of successful military action is considered a show of force and positive for the U.S. That's a positive action too.
So that point is so important. It's so key, right? There are more things at play here than just what we see on television, right? He was saying that the United States executing a military operation successfully, in the way that they successfully maneuvered in this operation, meaning no one knew it was coming, right? That shows not just the Iranian people, but other countries around the world like China, Russia, North Korea, etc., that the military from the United States perspective is effective, right? So when we start talking about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, when we start talking about the possibility of, in a few years, China doing what Russia did with Ukraine, but actually doing doing it with what they say is a Chinese nation, which is Taiwan, right? The Chinese want to do very similar to what Russia did with Ukraine. They want to do it with Taiwan. The United States is a ally of Taiwan, right? So we, similar to what we did with Ukraine, would assist Taiwan in a conflict with China. Now, again, this is a very detailed conversation, a very layered discussion, because one thing does affect another thing, and then it affects another thing, right? At some point, if the United States were to challenge China, because China wants to take over Taiwan, then that is something that, from a militaristic standpoint, the United States have to show we are competent, we are excellent, we can provide, support as well as operational excellence when it comes to our, relationships, our partners, In this case, Israel. In another case, Ukraine. And then in that case, when it comes to China, Taiwan, that we are willing to do X, Y, and Z in a way that you might not be able to defend yourself against, right? It is a message and a show of force, similar to what the gentleman is saying, that the United States did execute at a high level this past weekend, right? So when you're considering these things and you're thinking about these things, there are multiple different things happening all at the same time.
So I think that you have this balance of these positives plus the fear of what Iran is going to be, balance each other off right now.
Does that mean sit on your hands? I mean, usually the reason why the market is flat is because there's some people on one side taking a very strong bet that things are going higher, and some folks are saying, I'm not playing along.
Well, I'm actually, I believe there are positive trends. I've said now for, more than a month that the market believes that it could deal with a 10% general tariff, 30% on China. If it doesn't get worse, and no going back to Liberation Day rates, they think they can negotiate it. And, I'm not surprised at the positive trend. In fact, I would not at all be surprised to see in the next couple of weeks, again, assuming no big action by Iran, which, by the way, would bring about a big reaction from the U.S. And really, debilitate Iran. Saying that if that does not happen, then new all-time highs in the S&P are certainly attainable over the next several weeks.